This podcast is produced by Northwest Michigan Community Action Agency. The Collective Us, an NMCAA podcast, focuses on inspiring you through stories of those we've helped through our programming or by linking local resources to community members in need. Join us as we learn about the programs offered through NMCAA and how we touch people's lives every day. Welcome to The Collective Us. I'm Erica Austin.
And I'm Ryan Buck. Thank you for joining us today. While all of our episodes are important, today's episode is sure to be a good listen as we begin talking about the importance of advocacy. And by definition, advocacy is public support for or recommendation of a particular cause or policy.
That's right. We also need to mention that May is Community Action Month, and now more than ever, community action needs to be brought to the forefront. Community action is about helping people and changing lives. It's literally the tagline. The programs provided by community action agencies across the nation work every day to help people out of poverty and provide them with more resources to better themselves and their communities by creating pathways to prosperity, by helping families achieve long-term self-sufficiency while also working alongside partners in local communities to expand resources, community infrastructure, and growing economic stability.
Pathways to prosperity. Alliteration aside, I think that's lovely.
Yeah.
Well done.
Lovely.
Let's get to our guests because this episode, as we mentioned, is special, exceptional, one would say, because we have not one, but two NMCAA board members in the studio with us today. This is exciting. Both of whom, I guess, made their first appearance on the hardest episode to do, the live episode. So this should be probably quite easy, but welcome, firstly, to Peachy Rentenbach. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you, Ryan. Nice to be here.
Thank you. And we also have Sam Getsinger with us. Welcome.
Thank you, Ryan.
Is this a little less stressful than having a bunch of people staring at you? Just us two?
A lot.
A lot less? Okay, cool. Good to know.
Way more fun.
Well, let's start by getting to know each of you. Before we rolled, I talked a little bit about my personal admiration for board service. And so let's really get to know the real you. So, Peachy, let's start with you. Who are you really? And how did you get involved with NMCAA?
Who am I really? Really?
However you'd like to feel this. We said these were softball questions.
I am really just another human being on the face of the earth, trying to do what I can to make people live a better life.
And how did you get involved with NMCAA? What was the spark that drove you that way?
I sold my restaurant that I had owned for 18 years, and being in the food business for a number of years, I wanted to get involved with another organization that had to do with helping people have sustainable food. So I saw an opportunity through the county, and I volunteered to serve on the board of NMCAA because of Meals on Wheels.
I was wondering if there's a program or something that drew your attention initially, but you probably have learned quite a bit, as I do, about the scope of what NMCAA does.
Oh, absolutely. And my background is that I have a major in human ecology, but a minor in family life education. So I am also a teacher. And I'm interested in now, of course, the Head Start program. And we have so many wonderful other financial management programs, weatherization, homelessness. There's so many things that NMCAA does to help people.
Yeah. But food and restaurant ownership, that's a lot. That's like swinging two bats in the on-deck circle and getting into something that may be less chaotic in a way. And speaking of education, Sam, maybe less seriously or more seriously, who are you? And how did you get connected with NMCAA?
Well, I think I have a kind of unusual story. I was born to a 17-year-old mom who didn't graduate from high school. I had three fathers. We lived all over the United States. I went to 13 different elementary schools. And what really saved me from a path that you would think maybe wouldn't turn out so well was public education. And the fact that my mom didn't graduate from high school, college was always going to be on my plate. So I have a master's degree. Now, I also was at a time when you could go to college. I was on a take a class, see the world plan. It took me 12 years to get through college. But I also hitchhiked through Europe and a lot of things like that. So you could do it in those days. You could afford an apartment, work as a waitress, and go to Wayne State University. Then luckily, Wayne State had a program where if you were a mom and had raised children at home, you could go to graduate school for no money. So I got my master's by only paying for my books. So I had a lot of help along the way, and I appreciate what help can do for people. So in these times right now, when I feel so many things are being cut, for the very neediest people, I wonder where has the heart of America gone, quite frankly. I don't know how we can stand by and watch the cuts for Head Start or Meals on Wheels and just walking around the park and seeing homeless people.
Right.
I don't know where our heart has gone.
Yeah.
Two very different stories, but there's really connection in the intense passion that you feel for now, all of it. But, there were places that pulled you in and you share education between the two of you in a way, do you not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's funny. My first political action was when I was 8 years old. My parents took me, my dad was going to LSU, and they took me to a movie where there was an orphanage in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I was so incensed that I went home from school the next day, dressed up in my mother's clothes, and started knocking doors in my neighborhood in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, telling people to stop having children and get the children out of the orphanages. So but also as a kindergarten teacher,
Wow.
I can tell you, when children come to school as kindergartners, that's how their hearts are. They see injustice, they don't put up for it.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to cut a tree down on our playground. My kids went out there and put their arms around it, and my principal said, we'll never cut that tree down.
Right.
They drew hearts on that tree. Children have that kind of passion. I don't know what happens along the way that we lose it somehow.
I was baking and selling cakes to the neighbors for their children's birthday parties.
She was the
cow.
pastry chef later.
That's my food background.
and probably nice because, I looked in at the restaurant French, the onion soup alone that I've heard about. So there is great pedigree going into the service that you're giving. NMC is super lucky to have both of you on the board.
Being board members, I'm curious how you feel that advocacy plays a role in community action in general.
Well, for instance, because I have some other things I do, I have a very large email list. So I send out the Head Start advocacy to over 730 people. So I think advocacy is the key to what's going on in our country right now.
Yeah, reaching out to those networks of people, absolutely.
Yeah.
Similar, Peachy, do you have any...
Well, I just think that every person that you touch, can be impacted. And so if you spread the word and then they spread the word and it just keeps mushrooming out from there. So that's, the object of the game, I feel.
And it's interesting that you bring to bear your networks and the folks who may not have been aware of what NMCAA does just by merit of knowing you, they get maybe a little more comfort with that. But when people hear the word advocacy, they might think it's political. So how do you define advocacy in general and in the context of your role at NMCAA?
I think it's having a heart. You advocate for things that help people. And by the way, this is the person that got me to NMCAA.
Oh, interesting.
Advocating board membership.
Yeah.
Well, it can be a bit of a tricky word to use. It can be weaponized. It can be, so advocacy, somebody might just be scared of it in general. Is there a way to combat the negative impression that somebody could have about the word advocacy? Just maybe by being a good example of it, being a good leader in the community? Or is it about a small community versus trying to operate in a larger space?
I think that starting with a small group, at Christmas time, I belong to a group of 14 women, and we usually give to a charity. And in the past, we've done different things. But this year, I suggested that we give as a group to NMCAA for Meals on Wheels, and they agreed with that. And, so now they're all aware of the fact that NMCAA is the fiduciary for a Meals on Wheels program. And I think that, they tell other people and it spreads the word.
Yeah. So that's the literal, and we talked about the literal definition of advocacy,
Yeah.
but I'm glad that we're trying to demystify a little
Yeah.
bit and clarify.
As marketing manager, this is just kind of coming to me as I'm listening to you all talk. Working in nonprofit, I've already mentioned this lots of times on this show, that I'm new to nonprofit. This is a whole new ballgame for me. And advocacy is also something that's somewhat new to me. And I think as I'm sitting here listening and taking it all in, one thing that kind of pops in my head is like having the confidence and knowing what you stand for, really kind of where it all kind of comes out. Like, I know I feel strongly about Head Start's program, for example, so I'm going to advocate for it. And I think that's a big key piece is just, how do you get to meeting, whether you're in a grocery store and someone sees the logo on your shirt and you can talk about how it's such an important program or all these other programs. But I think that's a big piece.
That's
of it.
amazing.
So, sorry, that just kind
But there's other factors that you have to deal with.
Absolutely.
Like budgets, grants, whether they be federal or not, right?
Yeah. So as we record today, the federal budget is being looked at by the administration and Congress, and several of our programs are being looked at as potentially being eliminated in next year's fiscal budget, fiscal year 2026. And while this has happened in the past, it's important to stay on top of these potential what ifs. Can you tell us from your perspective as board members, how should advocacy be approached in a way that's rooted in community and family?
Well, as I said before, I think advocacy is heart. It's like when I saw the movie of the children in the orphanage, I couldn't stand for it. I think advocacy is just looking at your fellow humans and saying, boy, life is unfair. Some people are born real lucky, some people aren't. And if we actually want opportunity for all, we have to be advocates because it's not going to happen if we don't. So some people do it through their religion, belief, but for me, it's just looking around and seeing people and not closing your eyes. I think, we often think, like in Leelanau County, you think, oh, wow, this is a really wealthy county. We have 47% Alice in our county. That's asset limited income and employed. The food banks in our county are having more people than they've ever had before. It's frightening to me. I do a lot of walking around in neighborhoods, and I've seen incredible poverty that we pretend to overlook. And poverty to me is such an injustice that I don't know how we can, as good people, just stand by and do nothing. So I think you have to advocate for others. It's just in our DNA.
Well, how about the word community? Just from this perspective, we talked a little bit before we rolled. I'm from bigger cities, and I have a lot of humility and a lot of admiration and respect for the access that we have. But then again, in a small community, these problems rise to the top much quicker. So how do you kind of define community within the scope of your board roles? What's really the main drive of community for you? Doesn't necessarily mean a school, and maybe more than that.
Yeah, I think that the whole planet is community, and then it comes down and comes down and comes down. So the board is a community, and all the people that we help are part of that community. Like I said earlier, everybody's connected, and I don't see any difference between one person and another person just because of their wealth, religious beliefs, color of skin, or whatever it might be. We're just human beings, and everybody's just trying to do the best they can for what they can offer to other people.
I love that, taking the planetary view and bringing it down more so. Community is everybody.
Yeah,
it is.
It's a great visual. And that we're all connected too.
Truly.
I do want to mention that some of the programs and grants that NMCAA facilitates that could be affected in the federal budget cuts include Head Start and Early Head Start, LIHEAP, which is the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, which helps fund our weatherization program, TFAP, or the Emergency Food Assistance Program, as well as some other USDA food programs, and CSBG, which is the Community Service Block Grant, and that helps fund a lot of our administration for community action just in general. We know that these programs support our local communities in many ways. If you want to support us by making your voice heard, we encourage you to reach out to your elected officials and let them know.
And that could be seen as a simple step, But Peachy and Sam, from your perspective, you've done big things, I would say, objectively, to help these causes. But what are some simple ways people can advocate for the programs that matter to them in their communities? Maybe just easy steps, a step forward. And then maybe if you're talking, maybe a big swing that somebody could take. So something simple, and then maybe something next level you'd love to see.
You can start out by going to a township board meeting or your county board meeting and speaking to local officials about the importance of the programs and what's going on in government that is affecting the changes that could take place, and make people aware through advocacy of how important it is that we keep these programs going.
I think by telling stories, too. I was a kindergarten teacher, and I worked at the Merrill Palmer Institute in Detroit, and I'd had a driver who would take me, and we'd go into apartments, not fancy apartments at all, and I'd have to find the kids' clothes, get them dressed, take them to Merrill Palmer, usually give them a bath, wash their clothes, give them 3 meals, and take them back home. I know what the difference in early childhood education makes for children. Then later, when I was a kindergarten teacher in public school, the kids who had had preschool were miles ahead, felt more comfortable, made friends easier. Now, the other thing about Head Start, it doesn't only just help the children. The parents of these kids also benefit because they work in the classrooms. They learn about more effective ways of teaching their own children. They also find pathways to jobs later on. Mm-hmm. It lifts the entire family. And so if we have, 1 or 2 families that go to a meeting and say, this is what will mean, even if it's like, I can't go to work anymore because Head Start's no longer available to me. Mm-hmm. I think people have to understand Head Start is one of the few programs that has data behind it, since it started. Mm-hmm. And to lose that program would be criminal.
Yeah.
Would be criminal.
Yeah.
And NMCAA really helps people meet basic needs for food and for shelter. Mm-hmm. And it's just so important as this education about what we're trying to do to assist people.
And stay on a healthy path towards growth, which is that other component of what NMCAA does, is lift and help them stay there and not have a recurrence. But you said something interesting about a local meeting. And if you would maybe just demystify that, because I get that. I think a lot of people maybe approach going into a government center or whatever and think that's a no-go. Maybe just restate these are meetings that are open to the public or something that might reach somebody about going to those meetings. Because I agree with you, that presence, leaders in a community notice an uptick in people having their voices heard. So anything more you could say about attending a public meeting?
Well, and when you get there, telling the stories, like Sam was saying, is so important about, one of my friends, she needed some help with her housing, and the LIHEAP program really helped her by building a little portico over her front door so that the rain didn't come right into the, front of the front door. She could open her door without being rained on, and did some insulation work and so on. So I think, knowing people's stories, she's also been a participant in our free tax program. Mm-hmm. So if you share those programs, and tell stories about what people have experienced through the agency and the help that is provided.
And again, those are meetings open to the public, and there is space for public comment.
Right?
Yeah, and talk about building community, going to those local meetings, your planning and zoning, you really build community that way too. But the other thing I worry about with cuts is the people that work for NMCAA. They have I love going to the board meetings because you come home feeling like people are actually helping other people. They're doing a good job. They're getting a decent pay, and, it's helping the entire community. So if we lose all of those funding, we're going to lose workers at NMCAA that have been giving their heart and soul.
We talk about employees all the time on this show. How big of an employer is NMCAA? Just leave that dangle.
Yeah. Well, I can give you a stat on that. We're the 8th largest employer in Traverse City proper, and we have over 350 employees. So over across 10 counties.
That is a staggering fact, and I love that you mentioned.
I'll add one more quick one. About 240 of them are Head Start employees.
And Head Start teachers and aides.
Aides, classroom staff, administration. Yeah. So that I also want to say that I love the idea of the small town meetings. That's something that, again, advocacy is a new thing to me, but that's not something that had crossed my mind. And I'm certainly going to take that back as a takeaway. I was on a call recently with some of our Head Start staff about advocacy and what that looks like and how to make them feel a little more comfortable doing that. And one thing that was mentioned was that somebody who may have not ever called an elected official might be a little hesitant because they don't know what that looks like. I'm sure both of you have had an opportunity at some point to call an elected official. Can you give us some guidance on what that might look like if you were to call someone and just voice your opinion on your approach?
First of all, you keep the number on your phone.
Oh my goodness.
Whenever you go somewhere, you say, if this is an issue you care about, call this person right now. Tell them your story.
Keep it handy.
You mean in your phone?
Keep it handy to give to other people.
Locked in your
That's
contacts?
perfect. Okay. All right. So update that every time we have a new election. Okay, got it.
I'm looking right at her phone, and there's a
Yeah.
significant name right in there.
There is.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Wow.
Any other tips?
Yeah,
on
I mean,
just
it
those
doesn't
phone
have to
calls?
be, wow, another significant name
Sam
right there.
is just bringing them up and showing
Saved.
us.
But, obviously the basics, prepare, be to the point, don't get drunk ahead of time. But, are there just any kind of tips for, even if it's just a message? Because I know from certain elected officials, 90% of their communication is bad and complaints. So if you can maybe pepper a little positivity in there, I know it goes a long way. Does that resonate a little bit?
For sure. Yeah, you always want to say, hey, I know your job is hard. I'm one of your constituents. I have a story. I'd like you to listen to me. I'd love to see you in person if that's possible. So it's just another human that really is supposed to be working for you. So if you think of these people as people who are working for you and your community, you feel a little more comfortable. It's not like you're talking to a king.
They want to remain as
Right.
elected officials,
Yeah.
and they know that your vote depends on their election.
That's a great point.
Right.
So if you just speak your mind to them, and in the instance of Head Start, if you have your child with you and you make the call,
Let the child say hello.
have the child speak,
Yeah.
Oh.
That's a great point. Well, I do need to interrupt the podcast because we do have a major career milestone achievement. In May, one of our employees has been with us for 38 years. She's our second longest tenured employee, and it's none other than the Michelle Carnes, who I love so dearly.
Cheers.
Congratulations, Michelle. We want to thank you for all your hard work and dedication that you have given to NMCAA over the years and how you continue to help your neighbors each and every day.
The Michelle Carnes, 38 years, 38 years.
Congratulations, Michelle.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So jumping back into the conversation about general overviews, as a reminder, NMCAA covers a 10-county region, which is a very large geographic footprint and
Yeah.
covers a lot of human beings and families.
Yeah. And I know that both of you have served on other boards and committees and you work in other capacities to better our local communities. How has your involvement in advocacy work changed the way you see community?
I just feel more connected. You know your community more deeply because you see the variety of folks and the variety of needs. And, it's just like being a teacher, when they're in your classroom, all those families. So I always did home visits, and you see the family, you see the child, and you get a better understanding. So the more you're in your community, the more you're out there. You see everybody at the grocery store, but you also see them at the YMCA or wherever you're going. So we see them on our walks. We just ran into somebody walking around the Boardman.
Wow.
It's just the more you're out there, the more people you're connected to.
Yeah.
Well, and like in our volunteers for Meals on Wheels, they're building their community just by bringing a little cheer along with the food to the people that they're visiting. And that, enriches their own community and expands it. They get to know more people. And
yeah.
And don't you think helping someone else lifts you up more than anything else?
Oh,
Almost?
yeah.
Yeah, combating loneliness is a big topic right now, and doing something good, even on your own, is proven to help you feel more connected. But you also, the both of you at these board meetings, and I love how you called your board a community in itself, which could be its own podcast, because that's, I think, a wonderful way to look at it. But you also, and from what I know about the show, combat realities. You You have to deal with a lot of gnarly stuff. So how do you maintain your positivity? How do you maintain your positive momentum? When we talked about it on the show a lot of you are doing things that are almost impossible to solve. So how do you maintain your positivity?
Well, we drink heavily. No, just kidding.
Beautiful.
No, there is no problem that doesn't have an answer. All things can be solved. It's just a matter of your ability to stick with it and to work hard to achieve that goal.
And have fun,
I
it
just-
sounds
yeah.
like, too, right?
And I
mean,
don't expect to solve everything. It's okay if I don't. Do you know what I mean? But
Right.
it's important that I still work at it. So I think that's what keeps me going. You know, as a teacher, I was always, if I asked my principal for something, they said no, I always said okay. And then I figured out the next time I'll just do it and ask forgiveness. But, you know,
Right.
but you figure out that no, you're not here to change the world. You're here for a short time. What amount of good can you do? And you're not going to achieve every goal. But you can achieve maybe more than you thought if you try.
So it's not that over time, because there's a lot of years of service here.
Yeah.
So over time,
Are
you
we
don't
going
see
to
yourself
solve
ground down and
we're
going, you
not
know
gonna,
what?
We're not going to solve
No, thank
inequality
you.
in the world. Yeah.
I'm not saying that I can solve the poverty in the world, but I'm just saying that I like to think I can by trying every day.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with leaning into big ideas and big solutions and thinking sometimes the impossible can be possible.
Right.
Because of how you look at the community. You, Peachy, you looked at it as the earth. You started.
That is-
That's bigger than the 50,000-foot view.
It is a community.
She met the universe, but
Yeah. Why not?
I'm not going to space these days.
Well, one of the things I work on daily as marketing manager for NMCAA is telling our story and showing the impact of these programs. And while I think there has been a shift in NMCAA's awareness based on the most recent community needs assessment, I believe there's still work to be done. Peachy, in your time on the board with NMCAA, have you seen a shift in public understanding or support for the programs that we facilitate?
I think that every year I've been on the board, which is quite a few, there's been a steady increase. I think that more and more people are aware of what we do, and I think more and more people are taking advantage of the programs, and the programs have grown every year, all of them.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
What about understanding, support? You know, you talked about Leelanau County, and there can be this high-level perception that Traverse City doesn't need anything. If you don't live here, you may think that we all have boats and we all have beach access. But in reality, if you live here, you know that a lot of people struggle here. So do you see the understanding that there's things that are underneath the surface of Traverse City getting a little better? Because these can be hard conversations to have, right?
I think, we were just shopping earlier before we came here, and the Women's Resource Center was having a fundraiser, and you were to buy groceries and put it in the basket for them. And I think in Traverse City, you see more and more of that. There's more and more people that are concerned about each other, and that community is growing as well.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Either or both of you may answer, but we touched on a variety of programs today at the root of community action, and it appears that it comes down to community and economic impact. Why do you feel this dynamic is so important, community and economic impact?
I think that it's about that realization of there's all different levels of people with their resources, and those that have more resources than others but maybe want to help others to gain, some more respect and dignity in their lives.
yeah, for some reason, I think in America, we honor the rich more than anyone else. And so I came from a family that was not wealthy. And in middle school, I would have them drop me off at the wrong house because I didn't want people to see where I lived. And it's funny because then the man I'm married to is from a upper middle class family, tennis clubs, country clubs, that kind of thing. And I have 2 grandkids that go to a very elite private school. I don't feel comfortable going to that school. I feel like I'm too poor to walk in that door. Now, I have a master's degree. I'm old. I've supported my family.
I'm getting the irony of this
Yeah.
quite heavily.
I mean, so I think it amazes me that I'm still painted with the brush of poverty. And I don't feel,
Feels like a little trauma there.
yeah, it
That's
does.
lingering.
But I feel like it's across the board. I think in the United States, that's how, for some reason, if you're rich, you deserve it. And same thing if you're poor. And I find that horrifying.
Yeah, that's a deep type of emotion that's hard to course correct. But awareness and conversation about that, I think, is super important. That's a point well taken. Talking about how that certain acts and certain experiences can be traumatic and stay with you for a while. Like being uncomfortable in a place that's, I identify with that personally. But it's just, I think that's deep-seated.
Yeah, for sure. As we mentioned, May is Community Action Month. If you want to learn more about what NMCAA does, you can check out www.nmcaa.net, or you can listen to us right here on The Collective Us. Find out more. And while early selection has begun, it's not too late to fill out those interest forms for Head Start and GSRP. You've heard a lot about that program today. If you have a child who's 3 or 4 years old and are interested in free preschool options, go to nmcaa.net to fill out the interest form today.
As we approach the end of the show, Peachy, and I know we said we didn't have any hard-hitting questions, but we left them for the end because we figure you're here and you're not going to run away at this point. And I think you will take this question seriously. So I'm not trying to prime you, but Peachy, specifically when you think about the long-term impact of your work with NMCAA, so let's say your board work with NMCAA, what do you hope your legacy will be?
Maybe someday they'll name an ice cream after me at the Moomers fundraiser on April 29th.
She just plugged the Moomers fundraiser. And not that it's, I mean, you're aptly named, obviously, to make that easy.
Peaches and cream.
Yeah, oh, my goodness. Wow. Well,
fun.
Legacy is something that is a tricky term, too. That could be like advocacy, because some people may attach too much to legacy. But an ice cream flavor.
She's more a legend. She's more a legend.
Yeah, I'm feeling that, too, to be honest.
Legend. Yeah.
So others just following in your footsteps, trying to raise the bar, as it were, just to make ice cream?
Sure.
That's great.
That sounds wonderful.
Well, we'll have to pressure her for another answer at another time.
Yeah. We'll have to have her back.
Yeah, and she does encourage the board meetings to be fast and fun.
See, I get fun too. There's seriousness, but I sense the fun. Well, I guess Sam's got the harder question now between the two.
Okay, so Sam, if you had to choose a spokesperson for community action, it could be anybody you'd like it to be.
Unlimited budget.
Who would you choose and why?
Pete Buttigieg.
Okay. Do you have a good why?
Because I think he, besides Carrie, our director, who is it's incredible.
She is. We've had her on several times.
Yeah, and that's been an answer a few times too.
But Pete is very similar. He's intelligent, he's kind, he speaks from his heart, he's never snarky, he's just human, he has understanding. He did so much good work, as a mayor, the programs he did for the people. I think he cares about humanity.
I think Ryan, I'm no sorry to interrupt, Sam, but I think he's local. We could try to get him on this podcast.
He's part of our Traverse City community.
Again, there's been answers
he lives
gone
across
out.
from Gallagher Farm.
Well, don't.
One of these is going to happen.
have to
Now
cut
it's
that
going
part.
to happen.
Yeah, cut that part out. Where he lives.
Now, one of these is going to happen. I love this question. We have to keep going on this question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nobody has said anybody who's really impossible to get so far, like anybody who's deceased or anything like that.
Well, I think we're about to that time in the show. Ryan, tell us your takeaway.
I'm going to reinforce what I said earlier about my admiration and my awe of board service. I aspire to it myself at some point, and I see these qualities of people who give their time with these amazing skills, and they're so different. But there's passion, like intensity. And I love that intensity can continue in a way, because I think that's what moves people forward. And heart. Sam, you've said heart a lot. And I'm going to really percolate on what that really means. Heart and community go really well together. So thank you for saying that a few times. You planted that well. Peachy and Sam, thank you so much for being our guests on today's episode. We really appreciate it. Would you come back?
Yeah.
Was this okay?
Especially if there's beer.
Okay, perfect. And maybe, another live one. You've already done the hard work. Now this is the easier version of it. But thank you so much for taking the times out of your busy schedule to be here. Truly.
Yes,
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Erica.
Yeah.
Our pleasure.
Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please share this episode or the show link on social media. Follow the podcast to know when a new episode drops, and rate the show. It helps us spread the word on all the good NMCAA does in the community.
If you would like to become a sustaining donor donor with a recurring gift or contribute a one-time donation, please check out nmcaa.net/donate or send us a message at collectiveuspodcast@nmcaa.net.
To learn more about Northwest Michigan Community Action Agency or the programs we offer, or if you'd like to make a donation, we encourage you to reach out at 231-947-3780 or visit our website, nmcaa.net. And to the collective today, we encourage you to continue to strive each day to do something to help yourself or your neighbors.